Hi, everybody. I'm Amy,
And I'm Audrea,
and this is the Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee,
or a delightful cup of tea.
maybe a little something on the rocks. Let's get started.
Yay! All right. So we are here this time with 27 essential principles of story. We're back with it. We had a little bit of a delay in the first part of this year. And we are starting this what did we call this? Our right
The right read.
the right read. So we'd had an overview of the book. We had Nicole on to talk about why and how this is a good book for an author book club and how she did it. And Amy and I started the read or reread for some of us. And now we're going to start going chapter by chapter. So if you don't have it, it's not too late to run out and buy the 27 Essential Principles of Story by Daniel Joshua Rubin and follow along. Amy.
And we will be posting the video for these basically 2 chapters at a time, the fourth Friday of every month. So you are welcome to join us. If you're joining this later and we've already posted, then they're all going to be on a playlist together and you can do it all at one time if you want to, or go at your own pace. But we will be doing one video per month on this book because we feel like you need the time to be able to go through it. And if you're like Nicole and you want to watch the movie or read the book that is referenced in each chapter, we want to give you time to do that and not feel like you're being rushed. So this first video is going to be on chapters 1 and 2. For these first 2 chapters, the first chapter is the example is Hamlet, and the second chapter, the example is Finding Nemo. I chose not to read Hamlet. Audrey has read Hamlet a gazillion times. So we're going to lean heavy on her for that. And of course, everyone has seen Finding Nemo. So, I
Yeah.
mean, all righty. Take it away, Audrey.
Maybe, okay. Well, actually, I will take.
Do we want to start with the introduction? I don't think we talked about the
Yes,
introduction.
we should probably. Okay, one of the first part. Oh, so am I at the introduction? So the introduction. So again, Daniel Joshua Rubin is a playwright and a writing instructor, and so he took a lot of his real life experience in writing movies and books and put it all together. And again, what I really like about this book is that he uses not just books and not just movies, but cartoons and podcasts. He uses all kinds of media to talk about the principles of story. So in the introduction or the beginning, before we get to chapter 1, he talks about how the book came about and why he chose to do it and how he structured the book. And we talked a little bit about that in the overview, but one of the really nice things about this book, if you are an author who is wanting to learn principles of story and see great examples and then apply those, this is an excellent book for that. And he's not even paying us to talk about it, y'all. Anyway, so one of the things he does is he says on page IX in my version, one of the pleasures of writing this book was diving deep into the stories in how a master did it. So that is in every chapter, he gives you the principle, and then he gives you an example of how a master did it with examples again from either film or books or both. And then he talks about how this book came about and his background of teaching dramatic writing in California and basically how he's lived the writing life and put all of that into this here book, which comes out to about 361 pages. And we'll talk about all of the different parts of the chapter and structure of the book and how it's applied and how we apply it as we go along. One of my favorite quotes as we get into chapter 1, and I'll turn over to you, Amy, is have confidence that if you have done a little thing well, you can do a bigger thing well too. And that is by David Story, the playwright. And that is in the opening, what do we call this? The opener of the chapter, part 1. But did you want to add anything about the intro, Amy?
The only thing I wanted to add is it says that he founded his own writing studio and he called it Story 27. Well, I looked up Story 27. I couldn't find Story 27. But what I did find was the Black Belt Writing Academy.
Okay.
The last time I looked that up was when Audrey and I first discussed doing this book together before we told you guys, which was probably 6 to 8 months. So if the Black Belt Writing Academy is still around, that would be great. I'm just telling you that I could not find Story 27, but I did find Black Belt Writing Academy. Other than that, I think you covered the introduction very well. I do like the fact that at the bottom of page, I guess it's 9 for this introduction, I like that he says the goal is to help you engage in more constructive, insightful conversations with yourself to
Mhm.
discover what you truly think and feel.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for me.
All right.
Dr. Will.
Moving into the first, and again, this book is structured into 3 parts. We're starting with the first part, and it has 27 chapters in it. See what he did there? 27 chapters, 27 essential principles of story. Well played, Mr. Rubin. All right, so the first principle of story that he illustrates is dropping the hammer. And how it works is something profound happens in that opener that will pull the writer or reader in, or the viewer of the video or play or whatever it is. And he says that when the hammer drops, something profound happens to your hero. The following are the 8 essential qualities of an event big enough to launch a story. And so that section is called the drop. And I just love that he says, here are this is the principle of story. It's called the drop. And here are 8 essential qualities of an event big enough to launch a story. So you can take how do you apply this? You could apply this. So you can take your own story, short story, novel, a screenplay, or whatever it is, and go through your beginning and read use those 8 essential qualities of an event and see if you've done any, all, or none of those, and see if you've got
Right.
a good hammer drop.
I also like that he says that when you drop the hammer and you tell the audience you're in control, you let them know that this story is going to be entertaining and meaningful and that you won't waste their time.
Love that. Just love
You
it.
know how much I hate feeling like my time has been wasted on a crappy book?
Yeah.
So I love that he points that out.
And, so some of the and, again, we don't normally go chapter by chapter through a book, but this is the right read, so we are doing this as a workshop. But I just wanna talk about the 8 essential qualities of an event because they're so cool how he's mapped those out. And so you're gonna wanna go get this book so you can, do this for your own story, but it is, number 1 is the event that launches your story, is it surprising or even shocking? It should put the hero in a heightened emotional state. That's number 1. Number 2, it not only heightens the hero's emotional state, it changes their attitude and indicates a shift in fortunes. And I'm not reading all of these, so I'm still leaving. I'm teasing you. There's still stuff for you to go get this book and glean. Number 3, it builds sympathy or empathy for the hero. And where have we heard that before? Well, if you watched or heard our video or on Save the Cat Writes a Novel, there's the building the empathy or sympathy for the hero. What he says is feel that this event happening to this person, this time profoundly changes them.
And
It instills a sense of urgency. So that's important. It'll keep people flipping the pages. And number 5, it makes clear what kind of story this is in terms of tone and genre, whether it's comedy, drama, dramedy, tragedy, etc. It is number 6, it establishes an object of desire, person, thing, action, or state of being the hero needs to acquire in order to exist in a new reality. And 7, it provokes a dramatic question in the audience's mind. And I love those. I've been listening for questions in the novels that I'm reading lately. And I can always tell when it was a good question because I can't wait to get to the next chapter. I have to get the answer. And those are the books you stay up way late into the night, or you can't turn it off if it's a series.
all of a sudden there's light coming through the window and you're like, what time is it?
Oh, yeah. Those are books. Yeah, I have to save those for vacation or weekends. There are certain authors
Sometimes though, you don't know it's gonna
I don't
happen.
know if it's a new one, and oh man, that makes me angry.
Just don't know.
They're so good, they make me angry. And then that was number 7, it provokes a dramatic question. And then number 8, it projects possible endings. And there's a whole paragraph about possible endings. What did you wanna talk anything add anything to the how it works?
No, because I want everyone to read that.
Yep.
I just
I
want
want you to read that. Okay. And then one comment that I highlighted that he says about your hammer drop or about the drop is if your drop lays down tracks for your reader to follow, right? So they have to continue through the book if you've done it right. And he says, if you lay down weak tracks, your story will get derailed. And I've
yeah.
read a few books where the opening, like, "Meh, what else I got on my TBR?" And you don't
And
want
you
your
know, I hear a lot of people have a problem DNFing something. I am not that person.
me neither.
I don't have time to waste on a book.
Yeah.
And whether it's an audiobook or one that I'm reading, I'm not I there's there are too many books to waste time on a bad book. So make sure that your book is not one that people are going, what's is there something else I have?
Yep. Exactly. So I have lots of highlights in the book, and I also have post-its for things that I pulled out. So there's lots that I highlighted here. Our goal here is to give you enough information to structure your story, but not so much it strangles your creativity. Only you know what your story needs. So that's what he's saying in how you set up your hammer or hammer drop, your drop. Um, and then he just emphasizes that I've highlighted a lot of that first setup section and got little bitty post-its in here. So there he tells you what that principle is. So it's called the drop the hammer, how it works, and how you can apply it, the setup, and then next we go into how a master did it. Amy.
Well, this is the Hamlet part where you're supposed to talk.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen.
Okay. His example of for this particular principle is in this part of the book chapter is the tragedy of Hamlet, so by William Shakespeare. And so his master is William Shakespeare. And he talks about the hammer drop is the death of the king. And he goes through, I think, all of the scenes and shows you how Hamlet reacts to the drop and I wanna make sure I get that right. So the ghost
Yeah.
of the king appears and tells Hamlet if you have not read Hamlet, I mean, it's been around since 16.
Yeah.
So,
It was not a required
spoilers.
reading when I was in
Yeah, spoilers. So it tells you how he tells you in here how, each scene by scene, how Hamlet reacts to the drop of finding out his father was murdered. It wasn't a natural death. And then he goes into seeing how that hammer drop affected Hamlet in terms of against the eight essential parts of or what do we call that? I'm sorry, qualities. So he talks about the each of the scenes and the hammer drop in terms of the 8 essential qualities. So it's surprising and even shocking. So, though Hamlet suspected something was wrong when he found out his father died, it is not only surprising to hear it confirmed by the ghost of his father, but the details of the murder, its wanton cruelty, its fallout, and that his father must exist in torment, which is part of that hammer, the emotion of the hammer drop in purgatory, are shocking for Hamlet. Number 2, it changes the hero's fortunes and heightens his emotional state. So in scene 2 of the play, Shakespeare makes it clear that Hamlet is heartbroken and depressed, bordering on suicidal. So that is how his emotional state is changed dramatically by the hammer drop. Number 3, does
hang on. I have something to say about number 2.
Mhm.
One thing that he points out is that you can tell that he's changed radically because he moves from being a man with no purpose to one with a sacred mission.
That's a good point. That is a good call out. of how you can tell that his emotional state has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
All right, number 3, does it I'm gonna ask it as a question, does your hammer drop does it build sympathy or empathy for the hero? And the answer is Hamlet is morally righteous, loving, sensitive, intelligent, passionate, intense, and funny at the opening of that's who his character is. And so, yes, finding out this terrible thing about the death of his father is garners empathy from the reader or the person who's watching the play. We understand that it's a heavy load for a character, a righteous moral character like Hamlet, to have to bear. And one of the things he says is consider how diluted the impact of this moment would be if Hamlet met the ghost 2 years after his father's murder instead of 2 months. So how the timeline of the story
Right.
impacts. Does the hammer drop in Hamlet instill a sense of urgency? Well, yes, Hamlet must deal with this immediately because his father's soul is in peril. His nation is in peril because the traitorous new king, his uncle, is on the throne. And I won't go into all of that, but he just illustrates all the things that are making this an urgent issue for Hamlet. And then 5, does it make clear what kind of story this is in terms of tone and genre? Well, yes, starting with something like that, the murder of your father and your mother being married to the murderer and all that. It's not a comedy. It's definitely not one of Shakespeare's comedies. So we know by the tone and how the drop of that hammer, what that event is, and we know what the genre is and what to expect as we go along. And number 6, does it establish the object of desire? Pretty clearly, we know that Hamlet must kill the king or do something. Just he gotta murder the king. He's gotta
With his head.
with help with his head. All right, and does it provoke a dramatic question in the audience's mind? Yes, when I first read it even in high school, and when you see different versions of it, even if turn off your disbelief, if you've read it a few times, it's like, how is he going to fix this? Is it for me was the question. How will Hamlet kill the king? Is the question because he has to deal with the morality of killing a person, and he at the start of the book or play is a moral and good and righteous person. So will he do it? Will he do what he needs to do to avenge his father? And to rescue or release his soul from purgatory and help his nation. And 8, does it project possible endings in the audience's mind so that it keeps them reading or watching? And we know that for this story to end is what he writes here. Hamlet must kill the king, and he gonna get executed for trying to kill, or he could get executed for trying to kill the king. So he could fail, or he could even quit trying to kill the king. We don't know exactly how it will end when we start the story. And if it's written well, and of course it was Shakespeare, we want to know what's going to happen to Hamlet, what's going to happen to the nation, and all the other characters that are in there. So that is a great example of that principle and how it's applied by a master. So that's how the master did it. So
Yep.
next,
So the next part is of how you do it. And he goes into all of those things that he's talked about needing to do. He explains to you how to do it. And he's got 4, oh, look, 8. I feel like everything was an 8th in this. Okay, so he's got 8 different bullet points to go through, and I'm not going to tell you all of them, but I will tell you that it starts with focusing on your objective, that you have to construct an event that impacts your character. And then you have to focus on how to make it end. Like, how are you going to wrap it all up and make it come out the way it needs to be at the end? Okay. So you want to make sure that at the end you wrapped it up so that your reader thinks, oh man, this event happening to this character at this time is a very big deal. Like that's where you
yeah,
want it to get all the way around. He also points out to have fun, which honestly, if I start writing a story and I'm not enjoying it, it doesn't get finished. Because if I'm not enjoying it, I know you're not going to enjoy it. So,
yeah,
I mean, why? I have lots of unfinished stories, just so you know.
don't we all? That is a club I think most authors, especially beginning authors like us, and authors making 5, 6 figures have talked about their trunk or drawer books. They put them away and etc. I will say that I have found when I'm writing a scene that I'm bored with, I know that something's wrong with that scene. I
Mhm.
haven't gotten I've I've gotten away so far of stopping what I'm writing because I don't like it. It's just that the scene I need to fix because I really like my stories and my characters now. I've got lots of drawer versions of the character. The characters changed and to the point where I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen to her? I want and unfortunately, also the bad thing about starting to really like my character for me is I don't want to do bad things to her. That's but you can't have a good book with conflict that people are gonna read if it's all just roses and daisies for the character.
Well, I mean, you could write kids' books. We want them to be roses and daisies.
Yes, and with minor peril, which that's the other reason why I like cozy books, and there's cozy fantasy now and cozy mystery, of course, and there's people are trying to write cozy thriller, but the whole point is that the peril is minor or there's not as much at stake. The stakes are lower. You know they're gonna get through it. So the question is, how are they gonna get through it?
Right.
And there's so that's why they call them cozy because they're much more comfortable read. You feel safe in those books. Yes, I like to feel safe in my books now. I think I always have. I
Oh,
do
no,
I do
no.
I like the angsty high angst like thriller movies and series and things like that. But I don't think I read any high angst anymore.
When I was in middle school and high school, I read Stephen King and V.C. Andrews. Like they were a box of donuts. Like I just devoured them.
Wow.
Now, and I used to watch Nightmare on Elm Street and like
Yeah.
all of that. Right now, I don't want to read it. I don't want to watch it. I want people to die, but I don't need them being chased through an open field by some creature. I think the most freaky that I watch now is I'll watch an M. Night Shyamalan, however you pronounce his last name, M. Night
Yep.
whatchamadoodle.
We
I
know.
don't I'll watch his stuff because he does it in such a way
Yes.
that you're like, "Hey, oh," right? So, I love watching his stuff, but other than that, if it's a thriller or anything where remotely where it's gonna be scary, I'm like, "Meh." Randy wants to watch it and the part will come up and I'll just go, I don't wanna see it. I'll close my eyes and I'll go, "La, la, la, la," because I don't wanna hear it, so
Yeah.
how we got off of that, I don't know.
It's angst. We were talking about angst.
Oh, yes, yes, and being bored. Okay,
Bored and how you
okay,
don't want to bore your readers. So
okay, so next thing in the book is
you
he does at the end of every chapter do a mini final exam. So, you wanna talk about that?
okay. So the point of the mini final exam is to help you apply this in your own writing. And he gives you or give you an example for you to apply in writing something new. So in this particular final exam, he has a scene and he outlines the whole scene and there's 2 paragraphs and he says exactly what's going to happen and then he asks you the question, which of the following events would drop the strongest hammer in the story? And it's a multiple choice and there's 5 choices. You have to choose based on the theories of applying the essential principles of a hammer drop etc., you have to choose which one of those would be the strongest hammer drop in the story, which is kind of fun. So there will be a quiz. You have a quiz at the end of that chapter, and that helps you reinforce what you've learned. Well, I like it. Well done, Mr. Rubin.
And then he gives you a continuing ed, so if you want to read or look at something else. Now, here's what's interesting. The continuing ed for this is Test of the D'Urbervilles. I read that in AP English, either 11th grade or AP English. I forget which one. And I remember that I loved the book. I cannot remember anything about the book at this point in time. I'm almost 50. That high school was a long time ago. But I remember that I loved this book. So I was very excited to see that he put it down as the continuing ed for this chapter because I was like, oh my God, yes, I loved it. Couldn't tell you what it was about or anything that would in any way help you with this part. I just remember 17-year-old me loved the
Like,
test of the D'Urbervilles.
I I think I would have to guess because I don't remember the plot at all, but I remember I didn't like it. I liked the writing, but I didn't like the plot. Yeah. So I will have to look it up. Now I'll have to look it up after we do this video, but I would suspect that if a teenage you liked it, that it's very angsty and emotional. Something like that.
It's not angsty though.
I thought that was a requisite for being a teenager. You have to be
Yeah, but
more
that's I missed that part. I think my older sister got all of that out of the system before I was born.
huh?
Because
Okay.
I think
All right.
I don't think I got the angsty part.
So we're gonna both have to do our continuing ed and go look at Thomas Hardy's Test of the
I'm
Derby
gonna have to go reread it.
to figure out why you liked it and I didn't like, and why it's a good example of a hammer drop. The one other thing I wanted to say about the hammer drop before we go on to chapter 2 is I am trying to figure out if a hammer drop. Oh, one other thing before we go on. He also does when you do the I know ADD. When when he does the quiz or the final exam, there is an answer at the end. I hate
Yeah.
when they give you the questions and you're supposed to figure out the answer and they don't really give you an answer key, but he doesn't do that. So I don't remember what I was going to say now. Oh, now I do.
Okay.
Right down where I'm going to either stop this or just use
No, 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 I'm keeping this in.
anyway. The hammer drop versus an inciting incident. So an inciting incident is not always at the beginning of a story or a book or movie. They have to set up the normal life, and then something happens to propel the character into their journey to get to the end. And that's what usually is the inciting incident. But I think maybe the way he structured this as you put the hammer drop at the very beginning, and that's the way a lot of authors and author coaches, book coaches tell you to do that, put that at the beginning because that drives the story and sets a pace. I just found it interesting in contrasting how other author books and coaches.
Well, I think it might have to do also with what genre you're writing,
That's true.
because right now we're doing a lot of well, I'm doing a lot of learning for the cozy because that's what I'm currently working on. And you're not doing the inciting incident. I mean, you're not doing the hammer drop at the very beginning. You're setting up the community and the people and all of the things. And you're introducing suspects that no one knows are suspects. That's the beginning of the book. So, but yet, if you were reading a Stephen King book or I was writing something of that nature, I could see the hammer drop happening in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Like that would totally make sense. So I think it could be centered around what genre, or it could also be, are you doing a book? Are you doing a
Yeah.
screenplay? Are you like, because I've seen movies that halfway through the movie, you're going, they're just setting it up for the next one. Like nothing has really happened.
Yeah.
You're just setting it up, right? But then you have other movies where if they don't drop it in the beginning, like no one's going to care.
Yes.
So you could drop it in the beginning and then leave a little breadcrumb at the end to set up for a second one. But there's some movies that you just know you're watching, like the introduction to part two.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it probably has to do with genre, style, like
Yeah.
what exactly are you doing?
I was gonna say that for most movies, if this was a screenplay, and this is Hamlet is a play. In most movies, you would have to have that inciting incident so close to the beginning because people. I mean, I bought popcorn. You better entertain me. Let's move it along. All right. Speaking of moving it along, chapter 2.
Dun, da, da. Okay, chapter 2. Ask dramatic questions. And the quote at the front of this one is, you know what? I like it. I like it. And it says, judge a man by his questions rather than his answers.
Interesting. Yeah, that is an interesting one.
I like it. I think because with a question, you're the one coming up with the thought process and the idea. And I think you can tell a lot more about a person by their original thought than they're answering your original thought.
That's true. That's true. It's an interesting
So,
concept.
okay, so we forgot to mention at the beginning of every chapter, he does a quick take at the beginning of the chapter, which basically is he tells you what he's going to tell you, he tells you what he told you, all in one little spot.
Yes.
So you can know the general gist of what this chapter is going to be and the purpose. I like that.
Yes, we did forget to mention that. And yeah, and it's super well done. And he does that beginning of Ask Dramatic Questions, chapter 2. And he even sets up his own little acronym for CDQ, or Central Dramatic Question. So that is like
Not
the
cold Dairy Queen.
cold. Are you hungry, Amy? Cold?
I'm not, but there is a Dairy Queen one down the road that I would want. So, okay. So at the bottom of this section, I did highlight a part, and it says a well told story is fueled by questions that make people care about what's going to happen. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, the books I've been reading lately, I've been noting or paying, being a writer and studying all these books. Sometimes I feel like it ruins the reading experience because it's like at about this point, something is about to happen. I'm at the halfway point. The character needs to be attacked or something. But anyway, I forgot what I was gonna say. I am just so bad. No, I'm gonna just say 36 is where it is. Stop. Okay.
So this chapter is about asking dramatic questions. And he tells you that there's three kinds of dramatic questions. There is the CDQ, the central dramatic question. There's the SDQ, the secondary dramatic question. And then there's the sub DQ, which is just Subway and Dairy Queen. So anyway, subordinate dramatic questions. And no, I don't eat Subway. But I mean, a sub, okay, Firehouse. We'll do Firehouse and Dairy Queen because I do love me some Firehouse.
All right, we need to get finished with this video so you can go have dinner or lunch or something.
So I'm saying, okay, so he goes through, he tells you what the questions are, and he explains to you why they are important. I don't want to go into all of that because I want you to read the book. But he said this basic structure of dramatic questions: set up, ask, build, answer. You should not ask a question that you're not going to answer.
We're not prepared or don't want to know the answer to. But yes, I love how he simplifies that whole dramatic question thing in that structure, that it's set up the question, then ask the question, and then build and then answer the question.
Yeah. And I like that the part that he says when you build the tension is that you're making your audience guess how the question will be answered. And it's not necessarily who killed who, right? It
Mhm.
could be whose blue car is the one that was stopped idle at the intersection. It could be why is the lady who last week was buying groceries for everyone, why is she sitting outside the grocery store now asking for money? Like it could be any kind of question, but you set it, you build the tension, you set it up, and now everyone's trying to figure out the answer for you. And then you answer the question.
I really just love how he simplified that whole structure. And you can use that in your own books when you are no even if you're writing a romance and not mysteries or children's books, those questions are the ones that keep the readers turning the pages. So
Yep.
it doesn't have to be a cliffhanger. It could just be just a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
Uh, and I highlighted in here for now, he says, when you're thinking about what the question is and how you're wielding it as a tool, think of mastering dramatic questions like putting together the edge of the jigsaw puzzle. And then what the reader needs to get to is the center of the whole puzzle put
Right.
together. And the dramatic questions are the edges, which is a
Yeah.
very good analogy. All right. Then he talks about all of those in depth. The central dramatic question, the CDQ. Again, that's the question that fuels the whole storyline. So that's the major plot point, and then I started likening these elements to the stories I read or the types of novels I read. So like the CDQ would be in a mystery is solving who did it. But then the secondary dramatic questions could be the subplot. Like I just read one, it was about a chocolatier. It was very good. And the central dramatic question was who killed her friend? The subplot was what's she going to do with the inheritance of this chocolate shop. And also now the writer also set up another little mystery that you have to read book 2 for, and that is how is she gonna save her reputation, and why is this happening to her in her other life back home? But then he talks about shifting the CDQ and doing a retrospective. So he gives you all of the what it is and how to set up all of these questions and deal with them. And I I highlighted on, I think it's page 20. I know it's page 20 because I just looked and it's page 20. But I always say I think because if you're reading a Kindle, you have to figure out what that page is. But anyway, an internal CDQ is one that deals with the hero's attempt to acquire an object of desire that deals with the character's quest to achieve greater peace of mind. That was a lot. And trying to figure out how I would use that in my own book, that there was, like, all of these like that meme with, like, math symbols, and the person is doing a lot of heavy thinking. Okay, but I interrupted. Alright, get to our where are you next?
You didn't interrupt. So yeah, so he has the CDQ, but he tells you that there's basically 4 different kinds of CDQ, and he goes through each of them. And then he says very simply, think up a hero, drop the hammer, provide the CDQ. And then of course answer the CDQ. Let's see. He says that a tight, coherent narrative, one that makes it easy to see what kind of story you're telling and what it's about, is much simpler to edit, punch up, and improve. Yeah, he's not wrong.
Which is a good tip for, writing or editing your own book. So maybe your
Yeah.
dramatic questions are not that interesting. So that can help you with editing your book. I really like, the last part of the how to do or, what it is, right before we go on to how a master did it, and I highlighted that whole section. So when you hear it and it goes thusly. When you hear people talk about being on the edge of their seats. Sorry, did you hear that barking?
No.
Oh, okay, good. All right. When you hear people talk about being on the edge of their seats, what they mean is that they're riveted by the way one dramatic question provokes another and another as your story builds momentum, raises stakes, deepens character, and moves towards its conclusion, aka the answer to all the questions.
Yep. I handle that part too. See.
Ah, yes.
And then he goes into how a master did it. And we're not gonna talk about Finding Nemo, but his example is Finding Nemo. And he goes through the hammer, the CDQ, the sub CDQ, all the things. I'm gonna turn a light on because it's starting to get dark in here. And then he goes through the ask and answer for Act 2. He gives you all the bullet points for Finding Nemo, the ask and answer all the way through. And he points out that literally it's ask a question, answer it, ask a question, answer it,
Yeah.
ask a question, answer it. I will say that you can ask a question, don't quite answer it yet, and ask another question and answer it later. Like,
Mhm.
as long as you answer all the questions, you don't want to get done and your reader is going, wait, but what happened? Like, we were talking about Cynthia and that chessboard that she had and how it had magic powers, and then what happened to the chessboard? Like, what? You don't wanna bring something up in the story that you're not gonna finish. Like, because then you're gonna get people, when they do your reviews, talking about how you left stuff hanging and you didn't answer all the questions.
Yeah. If you leave stuff hanging, you have to do it artfully because you could be doing a cliffhanger or you could have a
Yes.
subplot that is answered in another book and there's a through line for a maybe a 3-book series or something like that. but you want to leave the reader thinking that you are handling your business, basically. They can trust you to you're
It
gonna
was on purposes.
it was on purpose. Yes. It was by design.
Yes.
And then he gets to the how you do it. So how to apply the dramatic question principle to your own stuff. And he gives more examples of, for example, in one of them is, will a shopkeeper find contentment? So that's a question that you could be asking in your own. And then he tells you what type of CDQ that example is and what medium that would be from, and that's a novel. And then the main idea, how for that particular example, is how each day encompasses a lifetime. So he shows you how you can apply this in your own writing, and that includes adding a secondary dramatic question and more examples. And then I highlighted it down there at the bottom is when his suggestion is to practice the setup, ask, build, answer dynamic of dramatic questions. And he says, create a dramatic question, set it up, build tension by raising the stakes, then answer the question. And he gives another example of it works like this. And more examples. And he says, as you craft your narrative, keep track of all of your dramatic questions, as Amy said. And as you list them, stick to the basics and make sure they're clearly asked, explore interesting ideas, build tension, and make you want to tell your story and that you're answering all of them. And then he gets into the mini final exam. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's again a questions that he set up, and he is a little story. He's telling you a little story, and then you have to figure out the answer. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but the question is, you're writing the last moment of this scene that he is giving you as an example. All the following lines express emotion, but which asks a question and provokes the most curiosity about the next scene? I have to say about this particular question, which I love the way he gives you a little vignette or story or scene. I wasn't all that interested to this one, but I did. It was a good illustration of the principle.
Yes.
It just wasn't
And the answer does make the most,
thin.
like,
Yeah.
provoking to want to keep reading the story. Yes. Now, the continuing ad for this one is a Netflix series called Russian Doll. I don't have Netflix. So, do you know what this series is?
I do know what this series is. I saw most of the series, but I do remember from the series, from the first few episodes, that they're just question after question after question. So you're just like, this is how you get to you make a bingeable series. Is there's just questions you just have to keep going in the series or the episodes to get to the answers. I was watching another TV show that was like that, and I had to stop watching it because it's like, I'm gonna be here watching this stupid TV show when I should be writing or doing my reading for our channel, The Right Crowd. So, very good stuff.
That means it was written perfectly because it kept
Yes,
you wanting to keep going.
yes. I'll have to list those. I'll come back with a list of all the ones that I think are bingeable because they're
I
probably
only have 3 because we don't watch TV.
don't watch TV, right?
There are 4, I guess, but there are 3 that every time they come out, we wait until they've been released, and then we will sit and watch the whole season, which is so different from when we were kids.
Yeah.
But we'll watch the whole season, and then we just wait until it comes back out again.
Yes. Oh, I can think of one off the top of my head, The Diplomat, which is also on Netflix. It's so beautifully written. Oh my word. It is so beautifully written. And we have to wait till they all come out because we don't want to be on the edge of our seats and going, what's going to happen? But I'll make a list of some of the ones I have encountered lately. So that's chapter 1 and 2 for our Right Read, the 27 Essential Principles of Story by Daniel Joshua Rubin. So again, if you don't have the book, you go get it because it's going to really improve your writing. And I have to say, in just those first 2 chapters, I started applying that and seeing where I had failings in my dramatic questions, and that's why my chapter maybe a little meh. So I had to go back through and figure out what question could propel the character through. So you can definitely apply the principle as you read this book to your own writing. So that's it for this episode. Anything else, Amy? One other thing, like and subscribe.
Of course.
Bye.
Toodles.